So you found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, and we are live, everybody. How's everybody doing? I am, of course, Dapper Dino, as you all know, or should know, because if you're watching my channel, how would you not know that? The name of the channel. But with me today, as always, on the second Tuesday of the month, unless she can't for some reason, which did happen, I think, last month or the month before?
I think it was 2 months ago, because it was definitely not last month. I think it was the month before that, because I was sick. But last month we had a great time.
Okay, yeah. All right, so of course that being Erika, the Gutsick Gibbon.
That's me.
Yes, and so we also have with us our special guest. I haven't had a sip to drink, and I'm already stumbling over my words. This does not bode well. But our special guest.
Don't complain.
Our special guest Josh is here. You might remember him from maybe a month ago or so, I don't know, something like that, on Kent with Bent. He is another one of my Navy buddies. Josh, why don't you say hello?
Hello, I'm Josh. I guess I'm a special guest as well, because I can be amusing.
No, he's joshing us. Got it.
Now you're on the hook for good jokes for the rest of the night.
All right, and we already have a super chat for $4.99 from Eric the Tyrannoceratops. Dude, man, I am telling you, today is going to be a disaster when it comes to me talking. He says, tomorrow is my first day of college. Going to become a paleontologist. I'm super stoked. Wish me luck on my endeavors. Congratulations and good luck. I am sure you're going to do just fine. I remember actually, Eric and I went to see the, the Victoria Mount, the Victoria the T-Rex.
Yes.
So he was in my area visiting his grandmother. And, he was like, hey, I'm going to be, staying, 20 minutes from you. Want to go hang out? I'm like, yeah. And then, of course, we're both into dinosaurs. So, we chatted with one of the people who was, the presenter or, an aide at the exhibit. Next thing you know, she's like, wait a minute, are you guys professional paleontologists? Because, basically what triggered it is we were having a discussion about where her replica tooth was from in the jaw, and we decided that anterior maxillary tooth was the most likely explanation given the shape and size. And yeah, so we are gigantic dinosaur nerds together. It was awesome.
And when Luke and I were in the UK, the famous Dippy the Diplodocus was on tour, and we did not get to see Dippy at the actual museum, which was just a shame because I'm a huge Dippy fan. So did not get to interact with Dippy in person. But I have seen Sue many times, and I did see all of the other awesome displays at the Natural History Museum there. But no Dippy for me.
I'd like to get up and see Black Beauty up in Canada. That would be pretty awesome.
That'd be sweet.
In case you guys don't know, Black Beauty is this Tyrannosaurus Rex specimen. It's very complete, and it's still preserved in the museum, mostly in the matrix. And because of just the details of the chemistry, the bones are jet black. And the matrix is not, it's like a light gray. So there's this great contrast, and the bones are just this shiny black. It's really cool. Anyway, but we're not here to gush over fossils that we have or would like to see.
That's actually the same situation, though, to be fair, as Paranthropus aethiopicus. Sorry, my mistake. Who is the famous black skull, which is that same really cool jet black. And every time I see it, I'm like, oh, I'd love to have a replica of that. That would be so sweet. But no jaw, so it lacks that.
But do we have a preserved tibula from this organism?
No, unfortunately, that's not a part of the suite of derived characteristics for the Paranthropines. That is a Australopithecus original.
Let's see. Oh, and T Lane says, to Dapper Dino, should I visit the Natural History Museum in Phoenix when I'm there in October? I believe technically it's not quite in Phoenix, but you should. That is the museum that Bill Ludlow, the late, great Bill Ludlow, volunteered at. It's not gigantic, but it has a nice, you might think of it as Tarbosaurus, but this museum is going with the Tarbosaurus equals Tyrannosaurus interpretation, which is a valid option. but it has a nice mount of that. It has a Triceratops mount. It's got a I can't remember the exact species of ornithopod, but it's one of the larger ornithopods. I don't think it's quite a hadrosaurid. One of the slightly wider group of ornithopods. It's got a really nice landed Quetzalcoatlus mount, which is nice because you don't see too many like landed pterosaur mounts, and it's in a pretty good position. It's got a couple Pteranodon sternbergi. It's got a Pteranodon sternbergi life reconstruction and a fossil reproduction. Some of the life reconstructions on the quote-unquote waterfall of time are a bit old-fashioned-y. Their Albertosaurus is a very shrink-wrapped. Its head is a little weirdly boxy, although Tyrannosaurus had 10 boxy heads.
Those reproductions are so charming.
There is some definite charm. It's also got a very, very scaly and unfeathery Utah raptor.
Oh, I'm such a sucker for like the really, really old school bipedal dinosaur pose where the tail is dragging behind and.
Oh no, nothing is that old school. This is definitely.
I love those though. Love them.
So I remember as a kid, there was a gigantic Tyrannosaurus sculpture in the Museum of Science in Boston, and it was originally in the kangaroo pose because it had been there since like the 60s or something. And I remember it wasn't until like the late 90s that they decided to like remove it and like fix it. So for a long time, there were like signs up about how this thing isn't very accurate. But the cool thing was you used to be able to be up on the second floor and there's this little veranda, and it would be looking you in the eye. But that's no longer the case because now the head is lower. Yeah,
see that's like the coolest thing. They should have kept it there and then just put the accurate reproduction next to it. Well, and then you have like this nice comparison.
Remember correctly, there is a bronze replica of the original that's slightly smaller, but it's outside. But still, you don't get to look it in the eyes like that. So,
yeah, big bummer.
Yeah.
My only anecdote about going to a museum is I went to the Smithsonian and they had. I'm assuming it was a replica of a T-Rex skeleton, and it was just like right on the ground floor, and I guess I can't high-five it because it only has 3 digits, but, and I was like, I don't know if I should have done that, but
probably not, but what are you going to do?
Gave it the old 4-limb smack.
Speaking of statues, there's also a nice brass statue of a fairly reasonable reconstruction of Dilophosaurus outside of that museum in Arizona. And there's also a pretty good life reconstruction made of like foam rubber and painted latex and whatnot inside, next to an adorable little Scutellosaurus, which isn't labeled. And I've told them that maybe they should label it. They haven't gotten around to it as far as I know. And another $4.99 from Eric the Tyrannoceratops says, have you seen my recent video on Jehovah's Witness and evolution? It's not one of my most viewed videos of all time. I used to be a Jehovah's Witness. I did watch it. Although I will admit, I watched it late at night while I was tired, so I need to go back to it. But yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses are sort of a relic from before the Seventh-day Adventists really kind of were like, oh, young Earth is the way to go. So they're actually old Earth creationists, and it's one of the weird little quirks that they're like one of the last bastions of old Earth creationism, but other churches want nothing to do with them because, well, I mean, in addition to their rather strange theology when it comes to most of Christianity, they're a destructive organization that makes life miserable for lots of their members and even more miserable for their ex-members. So,
congratulations on getting out of there, Eric. I find that most old Earth creationists are quite charming in their kind of stance on things. They're very humble, weirdly enough. Most of the OECs that I've talked to,
but
they tend to be like,
yeah,
that's exactly what I'm getting at. Like, you'll be like, oh, so what do you think about where's the line in the hominids, or like what areas of progressive creation are we talking about here? Like, are they at each of the major like geologic strata marks, or what's going on? And they'll be like, I don't know, we're working on it, and they've just been working on it for like 100 years.
All right, so I'm going to answer a quick question, but then we are going to have to go through the rules and get into this video because I know that we're all trying to delay having to listen to Eric, but that's why we're here. So, Monk...
They're putting so bad in this video, too.
Monk Mayfair asks, have I ever been to the Royal Tyrrell Museum? And I have, actually. When I was in the Navy, we had a port call nearby. And actually, I have 2 quick anecdotes, because Josh mentioned the Smithsonian. So, I have been there. I really liked it there. I thought their climate change exhibit, if I'm remembering correctly, it might not even be there anymore. But I thought that was excellent. because it wasn't just like dire warnings. It was also things like, hey, in the year 2050, if climate change goes at this pace, what kind of crops could we grow at this part of Canada or something? Which I thought was like interesting in itself, because like global warming is a serious problem, but if it continues unabated, things will change, and it would be interesting to know what kinds of things those might be, just from an academic standpoint. Like, could you grow coffee in Indiana at some point? I don't know. Maybe. So, things like that.
I would love it if conceptually, the idea of growing coffee in Indiana is nice, and then you give it more than 1 second of thought, and you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Right. I thought that was interesting. The other quick one, and then we have to get going, is when I was in high school, I went on I wasn't on a business trip. My dad was on a business trip, and I went with him. It was during the summer, and we were in DC, which was, by the way, extremely hot and muggy, and I did not like that part of it. But I basically spent the entire week reading the entire Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. I went through every exhibit and read every plaque.
Man,
it took a long time. Yeah. And then
last time I was in the Smithsonian, Dapper, I was still a creationist, for the record.
That's rough. I was not. Because my transition out of YUC was towards the earlier high school years. So
mine was in middle school. That's just the last time I was there.
Oh, I was there in high school, I guess. So there you go. Which meant you were probably there when I was in the Navy or something, because you're so young.
Listen, I'm not that young. I turned 25 this week, and I just want to throw myself in oncoming traffic.
You're talking to someone who's 150 million years old.
Yeah, well, true,
Okay.
But 25 is quite old for a gibbon.
That's true. You might want to start making your funeral arrangements.
I know, believe me.
All right.
Given Dapper's characterization of what I look like, he said that I look like a gibbon with, very little body hair.
Yeah, you actually kind of do look like a gibbon. You look like a gibbon with alopecia.
Yeah, I'm even older than Erika here, so I mean, I'm pretty much an elder of the community.
Right.
Yeah, the elder is the troop.
We got to get going. So we have rules because we're already almost 20 minutes in. We haven't had a second of Erika Hovind. We got to do the thing. So we have some rules though. We have a drinking game, and we don't encourage that you play it. In fact, we don't accept any liability for anything that happens to you if you do. However, we do drink for a few things. We drink whenever Eric Hovind gets something that is correct, and he's not just quoting it from someone else. We drink whenever he says something that's so stupid that we just kind of have to for the sake of our sanity. We also drink whenever he tells a joke that just doesn't land, and that usually means that no one in the audience and none of us laugh, and also usually what that ends up meaning is that we kind of were like, wait, was that a joke? And then we check, and yes, it was. And we also have a couple random ones. I don't know if these are going to come in anytime soon, but we have a drink for whenever Mothra or Godzilla come by, either audibly or in a super chat, because we do have, for channel members, some custom emojis. So anyone who is a channel member who wants to put a few custom emojis in the chat to show them off, there you go. If you want to join the channel, you may. But now, unfortunately for all of us, we do have to get to Eric Hovind, because this is not a 2-hour reminisce about museum stream.
Man, Dapper, did you see that Eric the Tyrannoceratops is sipping Gatorade? He's going to be so hydrated by the end of this.
Oh my goodness. Don't get overhydrated. People do. That is a problem. That can happen.
Hypernaturia is a thing.
Okay, textbooks say 4.6 billion years ago. That's what they tell us. 4.6 billion years ago is when the Earth formed, okay? Now, I got to tell you this also. There are many well-meaning Christians that believe the Earth is billions of years old, okay? Well-meaning, I'm not going to question their motives, but they're simply wrong. The Earth is not billions of years old and cannot be billions of years old, as we'll see from lots and lots of scientific evidence, okay? This teaching that the Earth is billions of years
old... Oh, I know I keep pointing this out, but that scene... Do you see that obvious texture seam on the Earth?
Dude, I remember we chatted about that last time. It's not a good one.
Just, the thing is, I know how you make that thing, right? You just take a kind of crappy image of the Earth that doesn't quite line up, and you wrap it around, and unfortunately for them, for whatever reason, the seam was right there in the middle of North America. What you do is you just rotate the Earth so the seam is on the other side. That's it. That's all you have to do.
Or, I mean, because they probably want North America on there.
I'm going to take a drink for how bad the art is.
Yeah, because I assume that they wanted North America like in the thing. So
Oh yeah, that like his audience is too American to have like Africa and Asia show up. And they're like, that's not the real America.
Just redo it and have the scene go along the Prime Meridian, and then just rotate it and show North America.
Yeah. Or you know what? These are the kind of people who unironically measure everything in distance to real America, like in Team America: World Police. Remember how they always gave location like a location, then they give distance from real America?
Yeah.
That's his audience. They're the ones who unironically do that.
The thing about this is, and I remember we established this last time, but at this point in the video, I was a couple of years in. And if I remember correctly, the narrative was that he had, asked his like nephew or something to go ahead and
his nephew doesn't like him.
Yeah, his nephew, he's out in California. He's at art school. His mom's like, please just help out Uncle Eric. Like, he really needs it. He's not good with the tech stuff. And ever since Steven left to go work for his dad, they don't have a tech guy anymore. So, just go ahead and do it for your dad. And then he's like, he half-asses it and sends it over there. And then he's like, I can't open the file. And that's a whole additional file.
I like to think that this nephew is like, he's actually like a high school kid who's been like using like Blender 3D or something for like 2 or 3 years now. And he's actually pretty good at it. And like, he was like, God damn it. So he found like the laziest image of Earth, just slapped it onto a sphere, and hit the render button and was like, there you go, Uncle. Just have it. And like, he actually could make a great image of Earth.
Oh, I'm sure he's very talented. I think that's almost part of it. That it's the half-assery has to be in the light of overt talent. Also, sorry, my dog barked because someone knocked on the door.
That's all right. Actually, I made a really nice, very realistic Earth for in his image the other day because he was using an even worse globe than this one. Didn't have a texture scene, but it was just terrible. I was like, dude, you could have asked me. I could get you like a top-notch CGI globe, because I went to CGI shell school for NASA, where they teach you how to make CGI globes, and I did it for him in like 5 minutes. It was like nothing.
You gotta like it. It's Emery, right? Emery
Moyna, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta like Emery. I like Emery.
Yeah, Emery's he's a nice personal guy, but we gotta get more Eric, because this is not Emery with Erika. We could have one of those sometime.
Yeah, I'd rather talk to Emery than listen to Eric.
Well, maybe we could have him on for a live show. Anyway, here we go.
So clearly puts death before sin.
Hey, he's right. It does.
The question is simple. Did man bring death into the world, or did death bring man into the world? Which one is it? The Bible says death reigned from Adam to Moses. It began with Adam. For by man came death. The Bible's very, very clear on that, okay? Now, who cares about the age of the earth? Why should we even discuss this? Why is it an important topic? Well, I'll tell you. Number one, the credibility of the book of Genesis is at stake. And Genesis
I like when these images slide in. We can see the fern kind of swaying with the motion. I think he gets like light credit for that, considering when this came out. Like, the graphics are okay. They could be worse.
Oh yeah, this is much better than the graphically than the Kent Hovind videos that we're watching on Kent with Bent right now.
Yeah, well, I mean that bar is like in the basement on the floor.
Yeah, I mean it's the most they manage is to cut to his slideshow occasionally while keeping the audio the same, which is also like better and worse because it means that all the horrible like camera choices that they make and all the horrible editing choices that they make have to be intentional, because that they cut to his slideshow means they're editing. So that means they could be doing better. They're just not. Like, if it were all just straight up single camera, we put it on a tripod, we didn't move it, then I'd be like, all right, fine, you just didn't edit, whatever. But the fact that they did, and they did it so poorly, actually makes it worse to me.
Yeah, the half-assery speaks for itself.
Yeah. But yeah, no, this is a reasonably well-produced. That's one of the things about Eric Hovind. Eric Hovind is slick. Like, if you watch his Creation Today stuff that he puts... I mean, he hasn't been putting out much lately, and I think that's mostly because of 2020. But if you watch some of his most recent stuff, like, it looks really high quality. Like, there's nice graphics, there's nice animations, there's cool scene transitions. He's got a nice logo that looks like it was professionally done by some actually talented people, so...
So, yeah, weird. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, well, I think the main reason why he's so slick is because of all the snake oil he has.
Yeah, like, you know, he got a cease and desist from the FDA.
Did he really?
Yeah, it was a while back now, but yeah, they told him that he could not continue to sell a world without cancer packaged with his apricot seeds.
His what?
He sells apricot seeds as a cancer cure-all.
Oh my god, are you serious?
Not kidding. He hasn't stopped. He just stopped packaging them together because that technically doesn't skirt the line. That technically is on the right side of the line legally.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Why apricot seeds?
They contain a chemical called laetrile, which crazy people thinks will attack cancer and not other cells. It will attack cancer, but will also attack all your cells because one of the metabolites of laetrile is hydrogen cyanide.
I was gonna say, yeah, isn't like a whole shit ton of those seeds and stuff from like cherries or whatever just like chock full of cyanide?
Well, technically, there's no cyanide in them. It's just that what your body
It's like
almost
a byproduct.
right. Your body, when it breaks it down, will start to produce hydrogen cyanide because when it breaks down laetrile, that's just one of the things that your body's going to give off. So the more you eat of them, the higher dose of cyanide you're getting. And the idea that these crazy people think that your body has a particular enzyme which neutralizes the hydrogen cyanide, but cancer cells don't. So cyanide only shows up in the cancer cells. Of course, that's just nonsense. That's just literally not true.
You really love to see it, you know? Like, I'm pretty sure peddling fake drugs is like a mandatory prerequisite for being a professional creationist. Like, if you're not selling some fake drug that cures everything, are you even, I
don't think Ken Ham is.
Ken Ham strikes me as someone who isn't because he has too much heat on him from the IRS already.
Yeah, there's been some shenanigans with taxes and the ARC Park, but we gotta keep going.
Additional book for the rest of the Bible. Can the average person read Genesis and understand it? You read Genesis chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4 all the way up to 11, and you tell me, did God...
Actually, I'm going to say no. The average person can't understand Genesis just by blindly reading it, and here's the reason. That book is about 3,000 to 3,500 years old. No one can read a text like that just on their own without ever bothering to investigate things like the cultural aspects of the time and whatnot. Like, just go read Gilgamesh. You're going to be confused by some things that are going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's written in. I'm telling you read this. It's written in plain English in the King James version, and it says that God in the beginning went through all of the motions, creating the water and all of the animals. And you really believe this theory is real?
Drink for Godzilla.
Godzilla did that because he didn't want to hear me doing my Ken impression. God, it's just so. They're just relentless with that. Like Just try to put yourself in the headspace of that kind of arrogance, where it's like you're taking a book that's been, translated twice in, through two different cultures, like you said, which is the, even more difficult to translate than the languages.
Yeah.
And expect that the way you're reading it is, that's just how it's read. That's, it says what it says, and what are you going to do? It's like there's no nuance to these people whatsoever.
I would say even much more recent works. Like if you read something from 1,000 years ago, anywhere in the world, you're not going to get it unless you have some understanding of the cultural context, because it's going to be very different than your cultural context sitting here in 21st century, wherever it is you live. I was going to say America because I think all three of us are Americans, but, my audience is not all American. I've got a lot of people from various places. Like I got people from Italy, Germany, the UK, Canada, so, want to be general. But if you're in the Western world in 2021, your cultural context is not the same as even 1,000 years ago. Never mind like 3,000 years ago. But here we go.
God make it millions of years ago, or did he make it just a few thousand years ago? You're going to read that and you're going to come to a conclusion he made it just a few thousand years ago. Plus, the credibility of Jesus Christ.
You might if you decide to take everything overly literally for no reason.
Also, pause for a second there. I was actually, I've been rereading The Bible Rocks in Time lately, which is a very excellent text on, it's two Christian geologists, and they're like, if you think the Earth is young, you're a moron. And I very much appreciate the work that they put into it, because it's a very dense book, and it's actually really tough to get through, even in a couple of sittings, just because there's so much to digest. the whole it's divided into thirds, and the first third of the book is the historical context behind uniformitarianism, actualism, and when we figured out how old the Earth truly is, as well as when people started thinking, hey, maybe this took a little bit longer. And one of the interesting things about that I had never really appreciated before, but it turns out there's like half a dozen or more actual number counts for how old the Earth is if you do all of the genealogy stuff. And it ranges from like 4,200 to 10,000.
Interesting.
So we're talking some pretty big error bars, even if you're doing what they want, which is literally trying to count up the years.
Yeah.
And I find it really interesting that they're like, yeah, dude, it's 6,000 years old. And it's like, really? Because the people who had nothing better to do than sit up and count the generation times aren't agreeing. And
right.
It seems like it should be a straightforward deal, right? Just kind of a fun fact for everyone.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that they also decided to go with the longest available time. Because, like, imagine if they tried to say that the Earth is only 4,000 years old and you had to fit a global flood somewhere in the last 4,000 years. Like, where would you... Like, it's hard enough to hide a global flood in the past 6,000 years, because that's getting to, like, the very beginnings of history. If you had to fit it somewhere in 4,000 years, you're, like, smack in the middle of a lot of Bronze Age cultures. And I mean, like, maybe in the late Bronze Age in some cases. Like, maybe the late Bronze Age collapse was actually Noah's flood.
Well, no, you gotta... The flood washed away all the evidence.
Well, that's the problem. We've got evidence of things that are just indisputably 4,000 years old. Like, there's just... I mean, granted, we have evidence of things from much, much longer than 6,000 years ago, but, like, even Ellen G. White, who's basically the creator of modern young Earth creationism, whether or not Hovind would like to admit it, she wasn't crazy enough to be like, oh yeah, sure, the flood was 3,000 years ago, when the Bible was first being written in, like, or like, looks like Kings were first being written. But we'll keep going a bit.
Well, I don't think it's a coincidence. Just a last thing on that. I don't think it's a coincidence that guys like Andrew Snelling, like the official, big boy, adult, Master Chief level creationist geologists, are essentially saying, yes, things do indeed look very old. The decay was just accelerated. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So we're agreeing that things look old, though, yes? It's just very interesting and strange.
I now, by the way, have a mental image of, like, like a nearly 8-foot-tall man in Mjolnir armor leaning down in the Grand Canyon to chip a rock away with a little, like, petrology hammer. I just don't know why that makes me amused, but it does.
No, I find that amusing. I think that's fair.
All right, here we go. Although, really, he could probably just punch his samples away from the rock. Who needs a petrology hammer? Just punch. Here we go.
Because he refers back to Genesis 25 times in the New Testament. He obviously referred to Adam and Eve as real historical people that he made in the beginning. That's clearly what Jesus Christ teaches. Plus, just about every other book of the Bible refers back to Genesis. That makes this an incredibly important
I'm going to skip ahead 30 seconds to see if he's going to get away from just talking about why this is important and talk about the actual science.
And you
would love that.
It is absolutely done. The Bible even said, Jesus of them. First one, and I believe it's a great one, the human population.
Here we go.
Back in 1999, the human population crossed the 6 billion mark. There are now more than 6.5 billion people alive on planet Earth. That's a lot of people. But trace the human population backwards and you'll find some interesting information. Back in 1985, there were only 5 billion people on planet Earth. Back in 1800, there were only 1 billion people alive on planet Earth. Interesting. The human population...
Oh, wait, he's broadly correct, so we're going to take some drinks.
Yeah.
Those are fairly reasonable numbers. Now, do we know exactly how many people are alive at any given time on Earth? No, not really. How could you? But
actually makes a curve on a graph. Interesting. And it shows the entire world population started about 4,400 years.
Now, hold on a second. We're going to rewind to that chart that he just put up here, because this is actually a chart from a reasonably good source. I want to point out that it doesn't actually look like his chart. So if you notice, the population is almost flat from, like, what is that? It's hard to read because, like, it's really low quality. It's basically like from 1200, like from like AD 1200 all the way down to like 3000 BC, there's only tiny and fairly linear population growth, right? And then around 1300, we get a spike. And I'll tell you why. There was an advance in farming techniques. So one of the problems that farming had up until the late medieval period was that horses couldn't really be used for plowing. And so basically only oxen could be used. And oxen weren't as fast as horses, and they weren't as plentiful as horses. And but around that time, a new kind of yoke was developed that horses could use. Because the problem was, if you tried to put an ox yoke on a horse, it actually cut off blood circulation to their brain, and they would die. Which, you know, not an effective way to plow your field if your plow animal drops dead because you oxygen starved its brain.
Yeah, dude, I honestly, okay, finish your point, and then I'm gonna.
But then, so then we get a new, still only, it's kind of exponential, but it's a little weird. But then right around 14 through 1800, we have another jump, and that's because now we're getting to the point where we're doing things like, you know, developing ever more technology. That's the start of technology really going off. And then around 1800, near the Industrial Revolution, suddenly we get gigantic spikes, right? This is an actually reasonable growth chart, and it doesn't do what Eric is going to say it's supposed to do.
Well, it also goes back further than 2000 BC. So there's that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it probably shouldn't, but according to Eric, but...
Yeah, science only works to the point that I want it to work.
Right.
So. The thing that kills me about this too is that Eric is like, yeah, dude, like look at this exponential graph, like look how it corroborates young Earth creationism. And it's like exactly what you said earlier, Dapper. It's not perfectly exponential, and if you zoom in on this graph or any graph of the demographics of humanity, what you'll find is that there are huge periods of population stasis, for lack of a better term, because like you said, there are these little filters that make it difficult for us to reproduce and kind of prosper at greater rates. And you've got medicine, which of course makes things absolutely bonkers today. But as you mentioned several, a couple of different examples, there are huge jump starts as you move backwards in time. The first of which was probably, I would wager, the agricultural revolution. But, the interesting thing about that is that this graph does indeed work in how it's displayed. And if you continue to take it backwards, boy, it sure does corroborate the populations that it seems that we have for like humans alongside Neanderthals back 200, 300,000 years ago, at least based on the remains and migration patterns and mitochondrial DNA that we have. So, boy, that's really strange. I'm sure that that's just a coincidence, and that it only looks that way because God set it up in stepwise with every other method.
Hey, maybe Eric Hovind will actually acknowledge all this stuff and be intellectually honest. We'll have to wait and find out.
Maybe he'll say that the spread of Christianity is the reason for those big spikes.
Oh, if he does that, we're going to drink. I don't think he will, but I guess he might.
If he were to do that, if he were to own it and be like, here's all this, here's all the holes and kind of our ideas, and we're working on it. If he were to actually have that kind of humility, I'd go into my kitchen, I would open up the bottle of vodka on top of the refrigerator, and I would down it all instantly, just killing myself with my alcohol, just turning every platelet in my bloodstream into mush, because there's no way that's going to happen.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen, because I would rather that Erika stick around and not die at the ripe old age of 25, which is old for a gibbon, but not for many other apes.
Yes, old for a gibbon, true.
4,400 years ago, not millions of years ago. We don't have enough people on Earth to represent millions of years of humans living here. You hear people say the Earth is overcrowded. I do not believe that the Earth is overcrowded. There is plenty of room on this globe, okay? Lots and lots of room.
All right, I'm taking a drink.
Yeah, I'm gonna drink for the subtle anti-climate change propaganda that felt like.
One of the things is, no one is saying that there isn't enough standing space. Like, this isn't like, a crowded hockey rink or something, right? Where, like, everyone is smushed into the stands and, like, people are crowding around the upper balcony just to get a glimpse of what's going on. The idea is that, while, sure, it doesn't take much space for a human to physically occupy, like, square meters wise, each human takes up less than a square meter of physical space for their body to be in. But The question is, how much space does it take to grow the food for that human? How much space does it take to generate the energy that they're using in their daily lives? How much space is unavailable for these things? Because you know what? Like, huge parts of like the Iranian plateau are just completely worthless because, you know, it's almost constantly 120 degrees there.
Or, okay, how about the fact that he just motioned to the entire globe, which is mostly ocean? Like, okay, Eric, you want us to charter a boat and send you out to Point Nemo so that you can enjoy all that space?
Also, we have a couple super chats. For $4.99, Eric the Tyranno Startop says, are you still going to cover the Ryan the Raptor guy I recommended to you to do video responses to? I'm going to be completely honest, I forgot about that. So I'm going to look back into that because I had been planning on it, and then other things just like got in the way. And then for $2.99 dollary dues, Ian Chen says Erika shares Amazon with apps called Primates, and also for another $2.99 dollary dues, he says Erika gets her beer at the monkey bars.
Ian, I'm because of those jokes, I'm this close to doing what I said I would do if Eric showed humility. I'm about to just kill myself with the vodka. Those jokes are too much.
By the way, Ian, I'm going to say it right now. This is me making sure that Erika is down with it. I told Ian that if he recorded his whole presentation that he was trying to give during his debate, I would definitely host it on my channel, and I said I thought you might too.
Oh, I'd host it in a heartbeat. I thought that presentation was like had me in stitches. My ribs are sore.
Yeah, it was a good thing you muted for all that, because my goodness.
I had to. I heard Ian. I heard one of the goals was to get me to break character, and I was very glad that my face wasn't on too, because I definitely did.
All right, well, let's hear what Erika has to say.
So much room. Did you know every single person on Earth could fit inside the city limits of Jacksonville, Florida?
Okay, I'm gonna drink because that's exactly where I said he was going. We're like, oh, you can physically stand all the people on Earth in some small space. Great, Eric. Good job.
We could all fit inside the city limits of Jacksonville, Florida. All of us, right there.
This just reminded me of that
billion
episode of Futurama when Fry and Bender become roommates, and Fry is complaining about the lack of space. It's like, there's another half meter in here. We could put another quarter of a person in this. There's plenty of space.
That's basically what Eric is saying would be overcrowding. But
well,
yeah,
Eric has the spatial understanding of a toddler, you know, or at least he's treating his audience like they have this spatial understanding of a toddler, right. You know, which is like, yes, okay, well, look at all this room, look at all this standing room, awesome. That's completely useless information, Eric. Thank you for nothing.
Yeah, what even is the point there? Like, there's just nothing. I don't. Also, YouTube is being weird right now with the streaming page. So if weird things happen on the stream as a result of that, I'm apologizing in advance. So just letting you know, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. They're basically just now being inconsistent with some of the metrics that I get on stream. So like, I don't think it's gonna become a problem. But sometimes problems with metrics can result in like. Can be like the first symptom of other problems. So just a heads up, there might be problems. Hoping there won't be, but you never know. All right, keep going.
Square feet. Yeah, they're saying the Earth is overcrowded. Excuse me. You ever driven across Kansas or New Mexico or Arizona?
I actually have done all of those things. And here's the thing: most of Arizona and New Mexico is useless to humans. You can't just put a human somewhere and be like, oh, now you're a human that lives here. Like, there needs to be an infrastructure, there needs to be food and stuff like that. And like, the amount of land it would take to support someone who wanted to be self-contained in New Mexico is vast. That's why, even today, the actual population density of these places overall is extremely low, because it can't be otherwise, even though there's localized areas. Like, you know, the population density of, say, Phoenix by itself is gigantic, but it's using up huge portions of land that are very low utility. And in Kansas, you know what? It's covered in farmland, because those farms are necessary to feed the people who could theoretically stand there if they didn't have something better to do. Like, you still need to use that land for that.
The worst part about arguing or covering creationists is that, you know, we're covering this as if it's a serious proposition. You know what, like, and actually analyzing the things that Eric is saying And it would be like having a conversation with a 4-year-old about the monster that's under their bed and like going over the logistics with them about that. When the answer is Eric should know better.
Right.
He's an adult man making the argument that because there are empty spaces in the United States, why worry about overpopulation?
And just for that, I'm just going to drink again because it's so stupid.
It's so dumb. Like it's just such a waste of breath.
Yeah, we'll hit play.
Or Texas.
Yep, been there too.
South Dakota. Wyoming. Need I go on?
Have you been to
Hey, I got an idea. If it is overcrowded where you are.
Oh, I have been to Wyoming. Again, mostly useless. Plus, lots of pronghorn, which is fun.
Ooh, pronghorns are cool.
Yeah. I actually remember I was doing a job out there, and they had these high fences around the whole compound, mostly for security against humans. But inside the fence, there were pronghorn droppings, because despite the fact that the fence was like 6 feet tall, pronghorn just jump over it like nothing.
Yeah, they don't care.
They're amazing. Oh, and Command Cyborg sent a blank super chat for 10 sex, so thank you for all the sex, Command Cyborg.
Nice.
Always appreciated. Although if you did have a message that you meant to put in there, just at me, and I will make sure to read it out. It might have meant to be, he might have meant to send an emoji of, say one of the kaiju, because Command Cyborg is a channel member.
That's a sweet Chiconer, right?
Move. Okay? There is plenty of room out there somewhere else, I guarantee you. Now, the world population is very interesting.
Physically, I could fit just about anywhere, Eric. Thanks. Even Hong Kong.
It's just a waste of the ATP in his cells that it takes to generate the energy that he can move his lips and make these sounds. I can't. If you don't like where you are, move. Okay, Eric, awesome. Take a trip over to Delhi and tell everyone there, hey man, listen, why don't you guys? I realize it's a little crowded over here. So what have you guys considered just like, I don't know, moving?
Yeah. You know what? I hear Kerala is nice this time of year. Just head over.
Just unbelievable baby logic here.
Yeah. Well, plus it's definitely some first world arrogance, the idea that you could just move. Like, most people literally can't. They don't have the resources to just move wherever they want.
So expensive.
Or where they want to move isn't a good option either, because it might that for whatever reason.
Yeah. Well, okay, we're gonna keep going a little bit.
In the time of Christ, there was only 250 million people alive. Wow.
I don't actually know if that's true or not.
That means
Look
the population.
Look at that chart where he actually went to the effort of drumming up the chart and showing a population growth that is not even on track with the one after Noah's flood. So you're going from 2 to wherever it is with the question mark, and then you're going from 8 at a slower growth rate.
Look, Erika, you know how the whole world was wicked in the sight of God before the flood? Most of that was just people being extra frisky.
All right, okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah,
not just that, but they were
chased
Noah. They must have been way better at farming and medicine before.
Well, yeah, this was before the flood. The vapor canopy was still protecting us.
Listen, I don't think we've ever talked about this on Dapper's channel before, but Dapper, I hope you and I have had the conversation about the Canaanite genetics, the demon genetics, or the Nephilim genetics, or whatever.
Oh my goodness, I don't think Eric goes into that, but that's a nephew thing.
Yeah, where they're.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
That might have to be a different show, though, because Eric, I'm pretty sure the Hovens never get into that.
Thank God, little blessing.
The human population teaches us that mankind has only been here for about, as you trace it back, 4,500 years, about 4,400 years. Not millions or billions of years. Cannot be that old. Hey, if evolution is true, if man has been here for the last 3 million years, as evolution claims, how many people should be on planet Earth in 3 million years? You do the math on that, and there should be, right now on planet Earth, 150,000 people per square inch.
Thank you, Eric.
I'm taking a gigantic drink.
Yeah, thank you, Eric, for there's so much wrong with that. From saying that humans were around 3 million years ago, which is, prior to many of the later Australopithecines, to talking about this insane exponential growth rate that, of course, he doesn't actually show the math for, to this, just indescribable graphic. I'm taking a big drink.
Yeah. So let's say that Eric is being we'll give some generousness to Eric. So let's say that let's see. Oh wait, I gotta.
Global population today grows about 1% a year. So I don't going from 2. So he's basically saying that going from 2 to today would be what 300,000, no 30,000%, because it's 1% a year over 3 million years. So 2, yeah, that's wrong. The math doesn't at all fly. Just back of the envelope.
Hey, I'm getting another drink.
Okay. Well, actually, it is pretty close. We could. No, we're not going to quite. We'll keep going a little bit. We're going to have a intermission soonish.
On planet Earth, that would get crowded.
No, Eric, because people would start dying like flies if that were the case. I'm taking another drink for that, because look, you would reach starvation levels of inability to produce food, because it takes a lot of land to produce enough food for any given human. One of the things is, like, huge portions of the inhabitable surface of the Earth are taken up just with crops. Because if you just think about just the plants that you eat every day. So most humans consume a fair bit of grain, they consume a fair few vegetables. Okay, but then let's take anyone who's eating any animal products, so whether it be meat or dairy or eggs or whatever. It takes a similar amount of land per pound to support animals, and this is, like, same order of magnitude similar, right? There's actually some big differences, but whatever. To get them every day to, eat that much. But then you're only eating parts of them. So the amount of land it takes just to support animals for human consumption is gigantic. And then you still need a whole bunch of other land to support human production. Because if you drive through, say, like, the farmlands in America, it's mostly growing things like soy and corn. But most of that soy and corn isn't being eaten by humans. It's being eaten by things like cattle or domesticated fowl like chickens and turkeys. Same thing with the soy. Most of that isn't being eaten by humans. Most of it is feeding animals that are then being eaten by humans. So it takes just huge swaths of land to actually support humans. And even if you're in a non-industrialized or even hunter-gatherer society, most hunter-gatherers have huge territories that they roam, searching for food and hunting. And even if you go with, like, a nomadic herder, they have to cover large areas of land just to feed their animals. You could not possibly get that many people. And the thing is, if you do the same kind of math, the Earth should be, like, covered many times over in, like, a deep, dense, miles-high mat of bacteria if this kind of population growth were possible.
I don't think we've been here for no 3 million years. Encyclopedia Britannica did an interesting study. They said, hey, if you were to go backwards in time from today's population, now our population growth rate today is 1.
Tesla Dre said, Smokey Saint knew Dapper was one of the soy men of evolution. Actually, I have very little soy. I have tofu every once in a great while. I have sort of a love-hate thing with tofu. I hate when people pretend that tofu is some kind of meat. Like, it's like, oh, this is just like chicken, but with tofu. And like, stop it. Just stop. Tofu is its own thing. I'm not eating chicken that you prepared just like bacon, because why would I? I don't want to eat tofu that you prepared just like a turkey. But, like, make a crispy tofu stir-fry with some, some hoisin sauce and some soy sauce and some watercress and, maybe some bamboo shoots. Yeah, I'll eat that all day. But, yeah, basically, I eat a little bit of tofu every once in a while, and then occasionally I eat edamame. That's about it.
I totally forgot about the 4 soy men of the apocalypse, or soy men of evolution, sorry. I love that. That's one of my favorite. I wish they kept with that instead of Team Dodgeball or whatever the hell they're calling it.
Why? It seems like a lost opportunity. Fun. Why not just the 4 soy boys of the apocalypse?
I would love that as well.
Wait, Erika, were you on that team?
So the thing is, at one point I was on the team, and then I think that was actually that time Standing did that weird deal, or one of Standing's friends on his channel did that weird deal where it was like, nah, Erika's more of the cheerleader. And then I was like, wait, hold up, my guy. I was like, what does that mean?
You put out
But, you know,
just as much content as anyone else, and like your content is definitely not just like, hey, look at these guys who are doing better content. Like, you're putting out a lot of original content. That's just weird. And
I gotta be honest, it felt a little bit like Because Woman, but I didn't want to. It was kind of like, hey, this feels a little bit like Because Woman.
I'll be honest, it's hard for me to imagine what else it could be given the content on your channel versus everyone else's. Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Let's just hope the Force Soyman thing comes back. Here's to hoping.
Yeah, it's much more fun. And it's more fun when everyone is having fun, guys. So, guys, Team Dodgeball is kind of lame. Like, it doesn't bother me. It's just kind of boring. Bring back the Soyman.
1.7%. They said,
Standing, I will offer you this right now. If you bring back the Soyman, I will buy a quart of soy milk, and I will drink it over the course of a single day. And I will live blogs pictures of the soy being consumed. So
I would love that, honestly. Like, the thing is it's just so funny because of how loaded it is too. Like, there's a lot of punch behind the Force Soyman evolution,
it's
and
so
I
much more
really
interesting.
appreciate it.
All right.
let's lower that down and only go back, have a population growth rate of 0.5% annually. If you go back in time at 0.5% annually, the result would be a handful of people 4,500 years ago.
Okay, so am I just not remembering how to do this equation? Josh, you're better at math than me. What's the correct equation I'm supposed to be doing for this?
Uh,
I thought it was rate initial population times rate raised to the power of increments of the rate.
yeah, that sounds right to me.
Okay, so what I'm getting is, if we start with 6 reproducing couples, then after that much time, we're supposed to be getting, what was it, 134 mil? Wait, no, that can't be right. Because I'm supposed to be getting about 6 billion, right?
6.5 billion at the time of this video, according to Eric.
I feel like I'm not getting that. Oh, wait, I'm getting crazy numbers. You know what? Josh, you do the math. You check his math, because I can't math while drinking. This has been established numerous times when I've tried to. It doesn't work. Like, I can set up, like, fancy, cool drivers and whatnot and do stuff like this in Blender when I'm sober. But then, like, you get, like, even, like, 2 shots of alcohol worth in me, and I'm just like, arithmetic hard, though.
Yeah,
So just to be clear, he's saying that we start out with 6 people.
Well, so he would say 8 people, but since 2 of them aren't apparently reproducing anymore, I'm just going to go ahead and say 6, because Noah and his wife are out of the game as far as reproduction goes.
Right.
You say that, Dapper, but I have definitely seen creationist arguments where they're like, people are living so long, and like essentially the summary of the argument is that like Noah is still clapping cheeks, and I'm just like, I'm telling you right now, guys, Noah's old as dirt.
Yeah.
That is like not that far after the ark, so.
What kind of rate are we assuming?
0.5% annual.
Okay.
Because I'll bet it'll come out if you use 6 or 8, depending, to about what he says. But what I want to do is then find out what populations we would get at other times. So you work on that, but we're going to play a little bit more.
Sure.
They say, on the other hand, if we were to go back 1,000,000 years ago, and 1,000,000 years ago is when the first ape stood upright and now declared himself human. Aha!
Erika, what do you think about that claim? Should we drink tonight?
I'm sorry. Did we say 1,000,000 years ago?
1,000,000 years ago was when the first bipedal ape stood up.
Yeah, I'm really riding that vodka on top of the refrigerator line right now.
That means we at least have to drink for that one.
I'm great. I can't. Okay. That's the thing that makes me so irritated too when dealing with creationists, because it's like, Dapper, you know this as well as I do. It's like what both of us do on our channels is that we dissect these arguments that they're making and do research in areas that are often outside of our area of expertise so that we can properly represent them and dissect them as if they on their own terms. Right.
And we pretend that these are serious ideas.
Right. And in order to do that, you have to understand what's actually being argued. You have to actually do the research into the hypothesis that they're presenting, whether it's hydroplate, or the wild speciation rates that are put forward by some of the baraminologists or whatever. But you can't argue with something you don't understand. And this is a perfect example of that. I mean, I really don't think that Eric could name a hominin outside. Like he might be like, oh, Neanderthal, and that would be the end of it.
I bet he could name Homo erectus and Australopithecus.
I really don't think that he could. He would say Lucy, and then you would be like, okay, what's Lucy speak?
Oh, yeah, he probably would say Lucy.
Yeah, so I don't think he could actually say what it is. And that's so insulting, because it's like insulting to the time of everyone who he is kind of bolstering to, right? And of course no one actually takes Eric Coben seriously or anything like that.
Well, his audience does.
Yeah, but that's exactly the problem, right? Is that, he's not even doing the barest minimum for his audience, and that's how you know that it's a grift.
Yeah, that is true. Because, like, if you want to be taken seriously in science, and you want to have, say, fringe or unconventional ideas, that's fine. Like, people have unconventional ideas and are taken seriously as scholars all the time, right? Like, look, my degree's in history, and one thing about history is that in actual professional historian circles, the phrase revisionist history isn't actually a dirty word, because historians recognize that, hey, you know what, we get it wrong sometimes. Sometimes, the typical history needs revision because it was wrong. Like, that's a thing. But on the other hand, if you're not going to take the time to actually know why the current consensus on a historical event is the consensus, no one's going to take your attempts at revision seriously. Like, if you want to argue that, say like the Battle of Bunker Hill actually took place on a different hill than we think it did in Boston, you're going to have to do some serious work into Revolutionary War scholarship to know why exactly people think it was the hill that's currently identified as Bunker Hill in Boston. Where there's like memorials and tourist stops and whatnot, and why it is a different one.
And then, you reach levels too, speaking of that, where in order for the creationists to get their way, which would be for them to be taken seriously, you have to be on equal playing fields with all of the other hypotheses. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, right, you have to set a precedent for your hypothesis being taken seriously. And in order for a creationist to do that, they have to overturn centuries of work in physics and chemistry and biology. Name a field, right? Like in science, yeah. and they're simply going to have to overturn some foundational aspect of it for creation to even be considered.
The only field I found that YEC probably wouldn't have to really overturn was optics. I couldn't find much in optics that creationists disagree with. That was about it.
Optics isn't like speed of light or anything, right? That's just color?
Well, it's, lenses and things like that. And it's not really an area that's undergoing a lot of active research. Most of what's done in optics has been kind of reasonably well known for, about 1,000 years now. So, yeah. Also, Dessel Drace asked, it's off topic, but read through Doherty or Carrier much yet? So I've done a little bit on both. I need to do more because I want to have a talk with Sal about those guys. And those guys actually are historical revisionists. And to be fair, they're treated as actual scholars by professional historians in biblical studies, the area of history in biblical studies. Although their hypotheses are not really considered to have much weight. So basically, they're both Jesus mythicist guys. And while they are considered serious scholars because they do actually engage with the actual mainstream and they have a pretty good grasp on it, their ideas are kind of lunatic, basically. Like, they're kind of bonkers. It's sort of like the Alan Fiducia syndrome, where it's like Alan Fiducia knows what the arguments are. He just has mostly irrational arguments against them. So...
Yeah, Alan Fiducia's bread and butter is intentionally misrepresenting that which he's arguing, so that he can continue to play dumb and pretend like his current work deserves to be taken seriously. Yep. Yeah, okay, that's what I was going to say. Robert adds it. That's why I asked, because he says speed of light is kind of integral, and that's why I asked if it was color.
Yeah, it is integral to it when you get into the actual, the underlying physics. But if all you're doing is, grinding a lens, it doesn't really matter. The math works just fine without you needing to know the speed of light, because all of it was worked out before we knew the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
So, it is, if you want to, dig down to, the quantum level and, what's actually happening with individual, photons and whatnot, then yes, creationism would have to overturn optics. But if you're going to like the level of like, you know, say like 18th century, like I need to build telescope, how will I do that? Then yeah, creationism will be just fine with all that.
Someone needs to let AIG know that they're starting a little bit high up on the ladder. You start with debunking optics, and then you work your way up to physics.
There you go.
First human, and then made somebody else stand up, and he called him his wife and said,
What?
okay, you're going to be a human, I'm going to be a human, we're going to make humans, okay.
This was either a joke or that was a serious idea, and either way, I'm drinking for it.
I honestly, like, it's not worth the time going through why all of that is insane. I mean, it betrays an utter deficit in any kind of understanding of mutation and natural selection and sociality in animals at all.
Wait, you mean when a new species of primates arises, it doesn't just grab a member of another species, tell it to be a member of its species, and then they just have babies? That's not how that works.
Unfortunately. Yeah, unfortunately, it's more complicated.
Oh, there goes my plan on getting myself a new species wife by just picking some organism in a close related species and ordering it to be my wife and have a new posture. So for $4.99, Eric the Tyrannoceratops says, question for all three of you, are Sonic the Hedgehog and Spider-Man scientifically possible? I'm gonna go ahead and argue no. Anyone disagree?
Well, Spider-Man might, in that I guess you could graft, like, genes work regardless. Like, you can transfer genes from one species to another through genetic engineering. The question is, which genes could work? It's not like spiders aren't strong based on muscle fibers. It's just it's basically their body mechanics. So Spider-Man wouldn't be particularly strong. I
also don't think Van der Waals forces are going to hold a human-sized organism to the ceiling.
Yeah, now the whole spider sense thing, there are spiders that seem to have very high reaction times that make it seem like they can predict things. So the sensory stuff, maybe, but that's about...
Overall, I think no. And then Sonic the Hedgehog is a humanoid hedgehog who moves at near the speed of light. I'm also going to just go ahead and say no.
I guess it depends on, like, you can grab spider genes into humans, and then you could probably get a humanoid hedgehog, but that's pretty much all you could do.
Yeah, but grafting spider genes into a human is not going to give you spider powers. It's going to mean that every once in a while you express a spider protein for some reason.
Yeah,
that's not how genes work.
I guess the most spider thing you could do is maybe you could get humans with spinnerets.
You probably couldn't even do that.
It isn't OD Spider-Man. That's just
being able to express the proteins in spider webs isn't enough to actually get the regulatory genes that factor into your embryonic development to actually give you the organs.
Yeah, right. You would need a great deal of engineering for that, but that like, everything else, nah.
So, Erika, do you think that they are possible?
If you were to create a Sonic the Hedgehog or a Spider-Man, they would look nothing like the Sonic the Hedgehog or the Spider-Man that you're thinking of. I would actually take the opposite approach. I think if you were going to go with Spider-Man, instead of trying to put spider genes into humans, I would just say take spiders and selectively, artificially select them until you've got something that is very large and somewhat man-like in how it walks about.
So we're basically doing Mimic, but with spiders instead of cockroaches.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
right.
I guess I'm going for more of a man spider than a Spider-Man.
Oh, that's what Frank went as for Halloween one year. And Saw the Sunny. Yeah, don't call me Man Spider, Charlie. I wasn't Spider-Man. I was Man Spider. Totally different.
I don't like this painting's. I don't like this painting, Charlie. Smug aura mocks me.
All right. Well, with that, we're gonna take a quick intermission. We'll take the opportunity to be able to refresh drinks and whatnot, and we will be back in just a few minutes. And in the meantime, I'm going to leave you with basically a commercial. So there you go. Oh, Nani? Dare? Oh, Ojira desu ka? Hai, Gojira-san. Hai. All right, we are back, and I am about to unmute everyone who wasn't quite ready to be back yet. Mm-hmm. All right, so first things first, Josh, you have some math for us, if I remember correctly.
I do have some math. So, according to, if we go with a 0.5% annual growth rate, starting with 6 people, going out 4,400 years, it's 20 billion. 4,200 years, you get 7.5 billion. But interestingly enough, after only 200 years after the flood, you only have 16 people.
All right, so I requested that Josh get me the 200-year figure for this reason. It's a reasonable inference based on the chronology that the Bible gives that the time that, say, Abraham gets to Egypt is a couple hundred or so years after the flood. Which means, and by the way, the time that Abraham gets to Egypt, it's portrayed as being, like the classical Egypt we think of. There's a pharaoh, and he has a court, and presumably they've got all these, monumental architecture and all that stuff. That was built apparently at a time when Abraham and his wife were a full eighth of the population of the globe. And you add that to Pharaoh, well, together, they're now 3/16 of the population of the globe. So who was building all the buildings in China or Mesopotamia or the Indus River Valley?
I love it. Who's heading over to South America too? Who's working in China?
Right, because we have archaeological evidence that 4,000 years ago there were people in all of these places, but apparently there's only 16 people total. And I mean,
the good news is Göbekli Tepe was just so robustly built that it survived a global flood. That's the good news.
It is, because that's coming up on 10,000? I think it's 9,000 years, isn't it?
I just realized a mistake in this. This is assuming no one dies.
Oh, good God.
No, you know what? He said a population growth, which factors in death of previous generations in it. So a population growth says, okay, the population total at any given time is this, then the next year it's this, then the next year it's this. Doesn't matter how many of those people die. Even if it's 100% die off every year, the new generation has the new population, then it's fine.
Okay.
So yeah, that's actually unimportant. But it is important to know that that's what you're doing. But yeah, population growth rates usually don't worry about deaths because they just worry about cross-temporal actual population from one time to another.
Yeah, the population change year on year, yeah.
Yeah, not to mention all of Abraham's livestock and slaves. Yeah, that's right. So Abraham had at least one slave who he had a baby with. That's Hagar. So Abraham's household plus Pharaoh is already a quarter of the world's population.
Beautiful.
That seems far-fetched. And also we know that Abraham had a no, I guess we don't have to talk. Well, we know he had a cousin in the form of Lot and his wife. So now we're up to a third of the population of the planet already accounted for just in the stories about Abraham. And we also know that Abraham's wife and he had at least 2 daughters, because he talks about his daughters. That's another 2 people. So basically, we've got the entire population of the world accounted for just in the stories about Abraham and his relatives. And Eric the Tyrannoceratops says, worst arguments for anything you three have ever heard. Mine is flat Earth is true because football does not exist. That is a particularly hot take on the flat Earth, I will say. I think the worst argument I've ever heard. Let's see.
Worst argument for
Except for
young
anything.
Earth?
Except for anything.
Okay.
Yeah,
It might be Kent Hovind's "You only believe in evolution because you're horny."
ooh, that's a good one. I don't know though. I think that the lame philosophical arguments or the you just want to sin ones, at least those to them make sense rhetorically. But from Eric's point of view, he's making arguments that are supposed to have a basis in empiricism, and they just flunk on every level.
Yeah, like they're not even internally coherent.
Yeah, they're not internally coherent, and they don't check out in any shape, form, or fashion.
You know,
I think it's a case for one of the worst that we've heard, at least here on air with Erika.
I did once hear someone try to argue that The Lord of the Rings was evidence for the Bible.
Awesome, yes, I love
And
that.
I was just like, what? And it's like, you know that any similarities there probably go the other way, in that, Tolkien was a devout Catholic his entire life. At a time and place when it actually wasn't easy to be a devout Catholic. That required, like, a conscious effort on his part. Like, it's not like he was living in medieval France, where, like, that's just what everyone does. He was living in, World War I and post-World War I, early World War II UK, where Catholics weren't exactly, the most welcome group. So, yeah.
I want to go a little different, and only because it's the first thing that came to mind. Is Venom Fang X's argument that the Earth must be young because the global flood could have formed the Grand Canyon in about 5 minutes.
Oh, I love that one. The Mount argument.
Goodness, the Venom Fang, that's deep. That's digging deep into the history of young Earth creationism on YouTube. That's like another whole generation of young Earth creationists. Although Nephilim Free was around at that time too.
Nephilim Free is a species in stasis. He's neither gone extinct nor has he evolved.
He's like,
Nephilim Free is a living fossil.
Yeah, he's basically the Methuselah of YouTube creationism.
Yeah, he is. I can't believe he still debates, honestly.
Well, does he still debate, or is he just rage quit?
Okay, yeah.
I gotta say, if you guys, I guess you can't really see it right now, because James took it down. Although I do think it's on Ian Chen's channel, and I think Ian Chen, if you're still here, I think you have a wrench, so you could post a link to that, or any of my other ones who want to too. But Ian Chen set a new world record for time to Nephi rage quit. Nephi rage quit during his, I think Ian's second sentence.
First sentence is the actual presentation.
Okay, yeah, first sentence is the actual presentation, and Nephi rage quit. Nephi did not actually even say a single thing on the entire stream. He rage quit before he said a single word.
Dude, imagine being such a baby. Like, the thing is, you cannot like what Ian's saying, or you can think that, whatever, it's being mean to Kent or in poor taste or whatever. For the record, I think it was very funny. But, like, imagine rage quitting because you're mad about the joke.
Yeah.
I honestly can't. It's such a gigantic baby move that it's like, I'm not going to play with you anymore because you hurt my feelings.
And that on top of the fact that Nephilim Free has a history of being very ill-behaved in live streams.
Yeah.
Although he usually does it in the form of, like, obscenely high amounts of sea lioning, but still.
I honestly find Nephi's eating paper on a live stream more offensive than Ian's joke.
It does offend my ears.
T. Lane asked my opinion of the Tier Zoo cringe regarding reverse engineering non-avian dinosaurs out of quails. I actually haven't watched that yet, so I don't have an opinion. But reverse engineering non-avian dinosaurs is kind of silly. But we need to get more Eric in here. We've only progressed 7 minutes or so in this thing.
It's such a rough one, to be fair.
It is.
So they did that 1 million years ago. And you were to have a population growth rate of 0.01%. Little bitty, insignificant number. That would mean at that rate, it would be a doubling of the people every 7,000 years. So you start 1 million years ago with 2 people. 7,000 years later, you've now got 4. 7,000 years after that, you've now got 8. 7,000 years after that, you get 16. If you were to do this for 1 million years, an astonishing 142 doublings would take place.
Is that right?
And there should be on planet Earth right now
a 0.1% growth rate annually over 7,000 years, starting from 6. In 7,000 years, you'd have a population of 6,500. So, he said, did I hear him right? He said it doubled every 7,000 years?
Yep.
Well,
Yes. Maybe he doesn't know what double means.
All right, well, we'll take a drink for bad math. Thank you for having the math handy. Because, like I said, seriously, I drink just a little bit, and my ability to use a calculator goes out the window. I just can't.
Well, I set up an Excel spreadsheet, and I just put in the years as he changes things.
The 43rd power. That's the number 10 with 43 zeros behind it. That's how many people would be here in 1 million years at that incredibly slow growth rate.
I just can't believe that even his audience isn't thinking, maybe not in the terms of the technical term carrying capacity, but just thinking like, hey, wait a minute. We've got a lot of organisms that reproduce, and they don't just blanket the Earth, and they reproduce way faster than humans. So that can't just be the whole thing. There's got to be something that limits population growth, right?
So, okay, side note, 2 things. You're right. You sure would think that the audience would be listening to this and he would be like, okay, this isn't all adding up. And in that vein, Guzman, you remember Guzman?
Oh yeah, Guzman.
He was on Speed's channel the other day, and myself and Dan were there as well. And Guzman is on the fence about YEC now. He's leaning more towards he's leaning more towards, I think, OEC, progressive creation. He might even be a little bit towards TE, like theistic evolution. But the interesting thing is, you want to know what's been changing his mind?
What's that?
He's been having conversations with paleontologists about the theropod to bird transition.
Ah, well, I need to get Guzman on then.
Well, that's what I said. I said, you need to have a chat with him, with Dapper. And he said, oh man, please give him my email. But I think you already have it.
Give it to me again, just in case. Just send it to me on Twitter or something.
But the point being that when people, and I said this, in the stream, I was like, it's amazing when people critically examine, arguments. And even, I said to Guzman, I was like, even if you come to the conclusion that you still, abide by YEC, that's fine. Like, I still respect you a lot for looking into it. But my stance on that is that anyone, of course, who is very much looking into it with the desire to find the answer is going to come to the conclusion that the Earth is not young and that evolution is like a thing.
Yeah, it's hard to come at a conclusion.
Yeah, so I find it very concerning that the audience is sitting here listening to this, and I sure hope that a lot of alarm bells were going off.
Yeah, I hope so too. Well, I unfortunately think that they probably aren't having alarm bells, but we'll keep going.
No, we haven't been here for millions of years. The evidence is clear, only a few thousand years, okay? So the human population is a great way to show how long we've really been here. What about outer space, where some of you guys are at right now? Outer space is a great way to show how old the Earth is. Galaxies. Galaxies are spinning, okay? Now the inside stars, the stars that are on the inside of the galaxy, spin faster than the outside stars.
That's true. Take a drink.
Well, we see arms on the galaxy. We see these spiral arms on the galaxies, indicating they are less than billions of years old.
And that's really stupid, so take a drink.
Yeah, oh my god.
How does that follow?
Okay. So what spiral arms are not coherent groups of stars. They're actually standing pressure waves that are regions of high star birth. That's why in the arms you get a lot of relatively young and massive stars, and between rings you get a lot of cool old reddish stars. Those are the only stars that survive long enough to actually persist in those areas. But as the stars move, as stars and gas clouds move through the arms, which like I said are mostly standing waves, new stellar formations occur. So right now the Milky Way is in an arm of, the solar system is in one of the spiral arms of the Milky Way. But that was not always the case, and it will not always be the case. So, yeah. Just, no, Eric. But let's hear his reasoning.
Evolutionists want us to believe that these galaxies formed 20 billion years ago. Some only say 14 billion. Okay, we'll say 14 billion years ago. Either way, because the inside stars are spinning faster than the outside stars, the galaxies should have spun out. They shouldn't have spiral arms on them like they have today.
Yeah, he's thinking that the spirals are basically like a vortex, like your drain, right? You know how like if you pour water down your sink or like you flush the toilet, it swirls? Yeah, that's what he's thinking is happening, which is, again, dumb, and I'm taking a drink.
God, you think Hovind the Younger is sophisticated enough to give us the white hole argument? What do we think?
Oof, I doubt it. I doubt it. I don't think we're going to get the white hole argument.
You know what I think we're going to get, though? I think we're going to get lunar recession.
Yeah, because his father is big on that.
Yeah, we're going to get lunar recession.
Okay.
They should be one even, smooth, homogeneous mass.
I'll point out a lot of them are,
But
so I'll
that's
take a
not
drink
what we
again
see
there.
Today. We still see spiral arms on our galaxies, indicating they are less than billions of years old.
Except for elliptical galaxies there, Eric, which don't have spiral arms. I mean, forget elliptical galaxies, right? They don't count.
Or irregular galaxies.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many kinds of galaxies, like spirals and barred spirals aren't all of them, but we also know why they persist in that. And in fact, just the existence of barred spiral galaxies shows that he can't be right about this, because a bar couldn't persist if it were actually part of a vortex for any period of time. It would immediately spin out. So just the presence of that means that this argument doesn't hold any water.
What about supernovas? Supernovas are stars
Novae, but whatever.
that blow up, they die in our solar system, or excuse me, in our universe.
Like, I'm not going to be a Latin snob right now, but still, get it right, Eric.
What about supernovas?
Well, we've seen supernovas about every 30 years is
I
how
don't know
often
if
the
that's
stars
true.
die that we've noticed, that we've seen.
So I feel like that means I should have seen more supernovas than I have in my time, or novae, if we want to be technical. But whatever.
Well,
God.
if we've been here for billions
Once
of
every
years,
50 years anyway.
there should be lots of supernovas out there.
Oh, drink for Godzilla. Also, you know what? Eric is right. There should be lots of supernovae remnants. Wait, supernova remnants? Yeah, nova remnants. There you go. Trying to get the grammar right. Lots of supernova remnants out there. And in fact, there are, but I'll still take a drink because he's right. There should be lots of them.
I mean, so for the Milky Way, observing supernovas, because it's pretty much is once every 50 years. So
Well,
my
the
guess,
universe.
yeah, I don't know.
Because we do observe supernovae in other galaxies. That's actually one of the ways we measure the distance to galaxies, is by observing supernovae in them. You know what? It doesn't matter. Let's just accept his every 30 years. It's fine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's
But they have
fairly
found
early.
less than 300 of them.
No. Less than 300 supernovae observed. See, there's a difference between that's how many there were or are, and that's how many are observed.
Indicating they haven't been around for billions of years.
No.
What?
Okay, look. Let's say that I say about every 3 seconds a fly hatches, right? Okay, so that means every 3 seconds a new maggot is born into the world, right? So if the world is 6,000 years old, well, we'll go with 4,400 years old. Okay, so that's 4,400. And then we got years, so that's, no, I'm telling you I'm doing this so I don't get it wrong, times 365.25 days, times 24 hours in a day, times 60 squared seconds in an hour. There should be 1.3 times 8 to the 11th maggots. Right now. Except here's this thing. You know what doesn't persist forever? Maggots. They either die or they stop being maggots, right? So we shouldn't have a whole Earth covered in 1.388 times 10 to the 11th maggots. That's not how this works. The thing is, supernova remnants do not stay easily observable forever. They fade over the course of a few thousand years.
So I think we could certainly make the argument that Eric is bad with math and bad with counting.
And also just bad with basic astronomy.
I mean, even the ones that you have a limited line of sight from the Earth as well. There might be something in the way of you observing it at the time.
Well, if there's something in the way of you observing it, then we probably wouldn't have observed it as a supernova in the first place.
Right. What I mean is that there are supernovae that occur that might be obscured by something else.
Yeah, sure. But what we're getting here is the average time during which a supernova can be easily detected from Earth, not how old the universe is, right? Like, it's sort of like, if I say that, we'll go with an even more direct example. If I say that the average rate of firework explosions on Earth is 1 a day, that doesn't mean you can count currently observable firework explosions and then figure out that the Earth is only, like a couple years old. It doesn't work, because they fade, right? Sure, that might be the actual average. It might be 1 a day, but that doesn't mean that the Earth is only like 60 days old on any given day. That's just not how it works. And I'm being generous as to how many, fireworks explosions are available at any given time. So yeah, this whole argument is just, it fails to take into account the fact that supernova remnants, while like as black holes and white dwarfs and whatnot, they stick, neutron stars. Oh, Godzilla. Twice. Thrice. So yeah, this whole thing just fails as a dating mechanism.
They've only been around a few thousand years. Supernovas are great examples. Jupiter, that's one of our planets, okay? Jupiter is cooling off. It loses heat twice as fast as it gains heat from the sun. So it's losing heat very, very rapidly.
This is broadly accurate. Jupiter actually does give off about twice as much heat as it receives from the sun. So,
Good for that.
Yeah, although, to be fair, Jupiter doesn't receive that much heat from the sun because it's really far from the sun. So.
What?
And actually, I've run the math on this before, and actually, I ran it, and then I double-checked, I think with Logic, who also did the math for one of his videos. Because, I don't talk about it much, but I do occasionally talk with Logic. We talk every once in a while on Discord, so. But, yeah, it turns out that what this whole thing means is if you run the calculation back 4.5 billion years, yeah, Jupiter was a few hundred Kelvin hotter than it is today. I'm like, okay, sure. I don't see some big problem with this. Like, yeah, we had a hotter Jupiter in the past. And? Like,
That's the thing. Like, he'll state things that are true, and then he'll be like, see what I mean? And the audience is like, yeah, of course.
Right.
But it means nothing.
No, it means, like, it means something. It just means nothing significant for his arguments. But
Yeah,
we'll see what he has.
Well, you can't consistently lose heat until eventually you get cold.
Right.
But Jupiter is still very hot.
Yeah, but Eric, that's like saying, okay, look, my cup of tea gives off more heat than it receives from my lamp. Therefore, my cup of tea had to have just been poured. But no, my cup of tea can persist being hotter than the ambient temperature for hours. It just has to start hot enough.
Maybe if Eric had taught high school math and science, for 15 years, he would have a better
Oof. Are you giving a dig at Kent Hovind or Eric Hovin's lack of credentials vis-a-vis his father?
I would never.
The sad thing is, it's actually kind of true that Eric actually does have fewer credentials than his father, despite the fact that his father essentially has none.
I know. Yeah, that really is the wild part. You can go lower than the bare minimum.
Yeah. Oof. All right.
How could it be losing heat for billions of years and still be hot?
Because it's losing heat at a rate that isn't inconsistent with this. Like it's
what?
Not rocket science here.
The sun gives off heat. I mean, there are sources of heat.
Yeah, I'm going to take a drink. Yeah, at worst, this just isn't a big problem. In fact, also, I think Paulogia covered this argument too, and he came to the same conclusion that it just means that we have a somewhat hotter than today Jupiter at time equals 0 for the solar system. Like, it's really not a big deal.
Nope.
It couldn't.
It could, though.
But if Jupiter was created just a few thousand years ago, like the Bible teaches, now that's an explanation.
So I'm actually going to take a drink for, this isn't quite wrong. And I'm going to take a drink for 2 reasons. One, it's kind of right, and 2, I'm kind of thirsty. So here's the thing. the thermodynamic situation on Jupiter is, of course, also consistent. You could have had a Jupiter that was only a tiny bit hotter 6,000 years ago. Like, but the thing is, you need, in order to say it's an argument for creationism, you need to have an actual reason why it's inconsistent with other explanations, and it's just not. This is actually a topic that I'm going to be covering in a video that I am making right now. I just finished recording it today and editing together all the sound and the clips that I want to use from other videos. And I'm going to be doing the animating probably tomorrow. But it's about falsificationism and what is evidence and what can science do in terms of like, can it prove things or disprove things and things like that. So yeah, it's just very topical for me right now, the fact of why this argument fails.
Is this in keeping with like part of your exchange with Otangelo?
Yes,
and
it was inspired by that, and there are
like
yeah. So for those of you who might not know, I had a debate with Otangelo Grasso on Modern Day Debate and after show on my channel, and it became very apparent through the course of the debate that Otangelo doesn't know how science works at like a very basic level. And his big problem is that he doesn't understand falsification. And so I am doing a video that the working title is Falsificationism in Science. It's probably not going to be the final title, mostly because, well, frankly, it's not clickbaity enough. And as much as I hate it, people click on clickbaity titles. That's why it's called that. So
Yep.
I would prefer to have more sober titles for my videos, but instead, I can't. Like, literally, if I... Yeah. So.
That would explain why it's still hot. What about its moon Ganymede? It's very, very hot, indicated by the liquid motion in its core.
Tidal heating.
I just want to point out, so by very, very hot, what Eric means is able to hover slightly above the freezing temperature of water. So I'm going to take a drink for how stupid that is, because, like, no, it's not very, very hot. If you were there, you would consider it very, very cold.
Yeah, and yeah, you would not thrive on Ganymede. Let's put it that way.
No, you would...
the surface temperature of Ganymede is 90 to 160 Kelvin, which is
yeah, it's frigid, but inside it's significantly warmer.
Yeah, because of tidal heating.
Yeah, so like, but yeah, we're okay. Here's the thing: if he ignores tidal heating, we're gonna take a drink.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's just
what if he acknowledges that as an argument and dismisses it out of hand?
No way. I don't think he could pronounce tidal heating.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
Ganymede should have cooled off solid
Look at this
billions of years ago.
hot take from 1996.
Indicating it's less than billions of years old. The rings around Saturn
Yep, he just brushed right past it. Take a drink for no...
Yeah.
So the thing about that is, too, why would you self-roast like that? Like, if your source is from 1996, why are you including it up front like that if you're, already trying to grift?
Look, because his audience isn't gonna fact check him, and they don't know how rapidly things like astronomy can change.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so, and to be fair to them, there's no reason why they should know that. I mean, most laymen aren't gonna know, like, how old is usually too old for a citation to be reasonable. Like, in genetics, like, if you cited something from 2012, most people would be like, dude, come on. It's 2021. Can you at least get me something from, like, 2018 or something?
Yeah, especially depending on the field, though.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, in paleontology, we have taxa that basically haven't been re-examined in 150 years.
Yeah, that's the case.
I frequently see... I frequently see new papers, and they're like, this is the first attempt to, describe this taxon since it was first described by Richard Owen in 1779. It's like, okay, sure. And you know what your citations are? The Owen paper.
I love it.
So, yeah, it varies field by field, and so, like, yeah, I can't really fault his audience for not recognizing that that's probably a bit old, but whatever. But we're going on to Saturn's rings, and I'm sure he's going to be stupid about this, too.
Ending. Saturn is losing its rings. Those rings are unstable.
That's true. Take a drink.
Well, you study the rings around Saturn, you see the formation of them, and you gotta say, hey, those rings have not been there for billions of years.
Also true. Take a drink.
They couldn't have been. Otherwise, Saturn wouldn't have rings anymore. They would be gone. But it's...
No. That's dumb, so we're gonna take a drink. I love it. He gets a few things right, and then he just turns into oncoming traffic.
Truth, lie. That's the game he's playing.
Yeah. Okay, so saying that Saturn's rings are relatively young, therefore Saturn has to be relatively young, is sort of like saying the zit on the tip of my nose only appeared 3 days ago, therefore I'm only 3 days old. Saturn's rings are a transient feature, or it might otherwise be like saying, okay, the oldest person in the world is 119, therefore that's how old the Earth is. In order to say this...
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
So in order for this argument to work, you have to make the initial claim that Saturn's rings have to be primordial to Saturn. But they don't.
I mean, Earth's moon isn't even as old as the Earth. Well, I mean, I guess the reigning theory is that something
Earth
collided with
the
pre-Earth, and then it kept in orbit. But I mean, so it's made of the same stuff.
Brian Stevens said, "This drinking just killed me." Well, rip Brian Stevens.
So the thing is, too, is that this goes back to that whole. I'm pretty sure the wiki page for Saturn tells you that, like you said, Dapper, the rings are a transient feature. Right. In fact, I don't even watch that many space documentaries, but every space documentary that I have seen that talks about Saturn, which is probably like 2 or 3, they go out of their way to say, boy, we sure are lucky to be here at a time that Saturn's rings are currently here.
Yeah, or at least as prominent as they are. It probably has always had somewhat rings, but they've probably usually been like Jupiter's rings, in that they're wispy little nothings.
Yeah, sure. Like, yeah, the very ornate rings that we see today.
I mean, for example, the Dapper Dinosaur himself is older than Saturn's ring.
True. When I hatched, Saturn had no rings. Presumably, I didn't have telescopes. So, because those darn Arabs hadn't invented most of optics yet. Going back to optics, which, by the way, props to the Arabs for basically inventing lenses.
Well, that whole region was like kind of had its own enlightenment, for a large period of history, didn't it?
But then an anti-empiricism philosophy largely took over the theology of most of Islam, and that kind of ended it. Womp womp.
Womp womp.
Yeah. Which is too bad, because there was a lot of really good science being done. Although saying that it was done by the Arabs is not always true. A lot of it was also being done by Jews and Christians who were not ethnically Arab in the area. So there's that too.
Dapper, the thing is that you couldn't work a telescope if you tried. Your arms are too small.
I have a butler.
True. Okay, yeah, true.
Okay. There's a lot of things I can't do, but I have a butler, and he happens to be a triconodont, and he has relatively dexterous paws.
Aw.
Yeah, adorable.
Still got rings. To me, that's a great indication. Hey, fits with God's word. 6,000 years ago, God created the heavens.
I mean, it's not incompatible.
What about the
with
moon?
That, so
the moon goes around the Earth. How many of you guys knew that already? You guys had that figured out?
Wait, did you guys know? Did you guys know?
Was that a joke that didn't land?
Yeah, that was. Don't take a drink for that.
Oh my God.
Okay, the moon goes around the Earth. Yep. By the way, does anybody know its official name?
It's Luna, but he's going to say it's the moon. I guarantee it. He's going to say it's the moon.
Moon.
I'm going to kill him.
Take a drink.
I'm going to go off the bridge.
Erika, please don't commit suicide by drinking.
Hey.
Yes,
maybe
Josh?
instead of calling him a manlet, maybe you can call him a moonlit.
That is a real word, though. That's a real word.
I know, that's what I mean. Like, because you're thinking of Saturn's rings, and I was like, what about moonlit?
Yeah, that was funnier than his joke by a lot.
Yeah, TD Lane points out that this is just Kent Hovind jokes with even worse delivery. You know what? Eric is slicker, but Kent just has more raw charisma, and I gotta give credit where it's due. Kent has a lot of just pure charisma going on.
Kent is he's an everyman.
He really is. It's unless
he has that southern accent. I think it makes him more personable.
He kind of does. He's got a weird sort of hybrid accent because he grew up in the north and then he moved to the south fairly early on in his adult life. So his accent is actually a little bit complicated. But yeah, if you're not paying attention to how ridiculous the things he's saying are, or in some cases how horrible the things he's saying are, it's very easy to get suckered into liking Kent Hovind.
Yeah, Beowulf says Kent is sometimes unironically pretty funny.
Yeah, he has some good dad jokes.
He does, yeah. I have unironically laughed at Kent before.
Yeah, and then Captain Gargoyle says that's cult leaders for you. And to be fair, yeah, that is part of it. And
True.
I'm not entirely confident that what Kent is running down there is a cult compound, but it's certainly not far off from it.
It's a potentially a sister group.
Yeah.
That is correct. We call it moon. Okay, the moon. I don't know. Never thought of that. The moon goes around the Earth, all right? Now, the moon is what causes our tides.
Oh, he's right. Take a drink.
Tides are because of the moon, okay? It's gravitational
Now
pull on the Earth.
now he recognizes
no big
tides.
deal. So we got
Yeah, that's true. Earth has tides. Ganymede, no. No tides for Ganymede.
tides these days, but the moon is getting farther and farther away from the Earth.
Also
Guys,
true.
we're
True.
losing the moon! Now, don't worry about it. It's
And
only
a joke that
inches
didn't
per
land.
year. No big deal, okay? But you want me to believe that the moon and the Earth are billions of years old? Now we've got a problem. Because you go backwards in time, let's see, if the moon is here and it's getting farther away, that means that it used to be...
By the way, sorry, someone might be letting off the occasional firecracker outside, and I don't know why.
Let's hope they're firecrackers and not
Well, it's
something else
too...
that's Earth.
The sound is too localized for it to be terribly far away, and it's not nearly loud enough to be a gunshot.
It's January. But is today bonfire night?
I don't know.
Let me check.
closer to the Earth. You go back in time, and the moon would soon, in less than billions of years, way less than 1 billion years, the moon would cause the tides on Earth to drown everything twice a day. That's how close it would be.
Wait. So he recognizes, due to like orbits, that things that are closer orbit faster, and yet he thinks that it's a linear progression.
Yeah, I actually, so I once actually spent an entire evening trying to figure out some way to make the math work for this claim, and I couldn't. And then I checked other people, and I couldn't find anyone who could actually make a calculation that made this moon claim make any sense at all. Not a single person I could find could actually give me math that would work. And I checked all over, like, creationist publications. I checked creationist YouTube. I checked what was it, Talk Origins, to see if anyone had just, like, you know, retrofit the math to make it work. And I couldn't find anyone who had figured it out.
It sounds to me like one of those things where Kent did the work, and then Kent was like, oh boy, if it turns out if you do lunar recession in a certain way, you end up with the moon being super close to the Earth. Well, if that happened, according to what, you know, the scientists say, the tides probably would have been crazy. And then he just let that run away with them, and it became what...
And I also feel like if you were to actually be able to check his work, you'd find that there's like a decimal point error somewhere. And he's just like off by an entire order of magnitude.
You hate to see it.
Well, look, I mean, I'll be honest, I make decimal point errors all the time. Like, not too infrequently, someone's like, hey, you're off by like a factor of 10. And I'm like, am I? Like, yeah, take a look right here. I'm like, oh yeah. Oops. So like, it's not that big a deal, but show your work so that way we can check. And you know what the Hovens don't tend to do with their math? Show their work.
Yeah, there's this whole thing too where when you create a whole ideology off of something like that, as one of your kind of larger reasoning points in your astronomy category, you kind of have to show the math.
I'm much more cynical. I don't think they did the work. I think they either just made something up or found some other claim and are repeating it.
Possible.
That is possible, yeah.
Oh, possible.
Someone I think tried to do the work at some point. But we don't have that extant, because I've yet to be able to figure out how any of this math works. And I've literally spent hours and hours trying to figure out, because it would be a better takedown of this argument if I could be like, okay, here's the math they use and here's why it's wrong. But instead I just have to say, I can't even find the math. And that's not as much fun.
Well, I mean, because he said the tides would be high enough to drown everyone twice a day, right? So what's the highest point of elevation that humans are living right now? And you just go by, like, can the tides even reach that high? I mean,
yeah,
I don't
know. Well, we'll continue on with the video.
Normally, we can only drown once a day. So that creates a serious problem for life on Earth.
Oh, that's
you
a
go
joke.
back about one.
It's also technically true. You can usually, on any given day, you can only drown once.
1.3 billion years? Now you got a serious problem, because the moon is skimming the surface of the Earth, just above the surface of the Earth, about 1.3 billion years ago. Well, that explains what happened to the tall dinosaurs. They must have got mooned to death.
Okay, first of all, that actually landed because I heard the audience laugh. So that joke landed. But also, there were no dinosaurs 1.3 billion years ago. There weren't even any animals 1.3 billion years ago. So I'm just going to take a drink for how inept Eric is at understanding the mainstream of science.
Yeah, he's very incapable of understanding or doing the work to even understand the basics. Like, it's laziness to the highest degree.
Oh, and Robert Adsit points out Roche World. Like, yeah, that's actually true. You guys might not know what the Roche limit is, but basically, for any given object, there's only so close it can orbit to another massive object before the tidal forces acting on the object are higher than the tensile strength of the object, and it will break apart. So, remember when the asteroid, or I guess it was a comet, Shuvi, what was the one that crashed into Jupiter, Josh?
Oh, Mariner? No.
Something. It was a 9 at the end of it. I don't know. It was not that long ago. It was maybe like 10 years ago. And it was a pretty wild thing because,
Was it Galileo?
No. I'm going to quickly Google it because now it's bothering me.
Yeah, I thought it was Galileo that crashed into Jupiter. Or Juno, more recently. Maybe.
Shoemaker-Levy 9 is what I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm thinking of something else. Oh, yes, right here, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a comet that hit Jupiter fairly recently, and it was pretty famous because, we detected it, and, like, people detected the comet, they calculated the orbit, and they knew it was going to hit Jupiter. But one of the things is, if you watch the actual impact, because there's footage of it, because, again, we knew about it in advance, you'll actually see that the comet breaks up as it's approaching Jupiter. That's because it went within the Roche limit. And the problem isn't that the moon would be skimming the surface or so close that the tides would have been incredible. The problem is actually that if the moon were ever that close, it wouldn't be the moon anymore. It would turn into a bunch of rings that would eventually rain down on Earth. Because the Roche limit is a thing. You can only orbit so close while retaining structural integrity.
So I just did the math on the skimming of the Earth as well. So 1.5 inches a year over 1.2 billion years is about 28,000 miles, which is about 10% of the distance the moon from Earth is now.
So even if we just assume a linear, it's just not going to do anything?
I mean, the tides might be stronger, but it's not going to be skimming the Earth.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
Surprisingly, the math don't work out.
But so they had a serious problem with the.
Also, I've heard Kent say that the closer the moon is, the higher the gravity is, therefore the faster it would be receding, which is the opposite of what's true. Because gravity is an inward pulling force, so it would actually be making the Earth or the moon recede at a lower rate. So, yeah.
Moon being that close a billion years ago, okay? What about comets? We got comets in our solar system. Comets leave a trail behind them. Anybody ever gotten to see a comet before? You ever seen one?
I have.
Really cool to get to see a comet come through.
This is going to be a warp cloud thing, I bet.
Yep.
Around the sun. Well, the tail of the comet is debris getting blown off of the comet. Well, you can't consistently lose material until eventually it's all gone, okay? Well, we still have comets in our solar system. When they study comets, they say, well, at the rate that they're losing material, comets should last about 10,000 years.
Yeah, this is just the exact same argument as the supernova.
Yep.
We only observe this many of them. Therefore, yeah, that's a measure of the stay time. If you can get new ones, it's not a problem.
Not only that, but the rate at which they lose material is proportional to their proximity to the sun, because it's mostly just the ice is gassing off, and that makes them more observable in the sky. So,
yeah. Romulus says gravity is not a force, and while that is true technically, in classical mechanics, which are still what's predominantly used in terms of orbital mechanics, gravity can be easily analyzed and used as a force. So it's like saying centripetal force isn't a force. Technically, you're right. But
got him on a technicality.
yeah, I'm gonna continue to be willing to use phenomenological language. Like, I'm not gonna say, oh, hey, look at that optical effect of the Earth rotating so that the part of the Earth that I am on now faces the sun. I'm just gonna say, hey, look at that sunrise. I'm sorry. You're just gonna have to accept it, that I'm not gonna adapt every utterance to be the most possibly correct from any frame of reference that it possibly could be. It's just, sunrise is going to remain part of my vocabulary, so is the force of gravity. So, sorry, Robert, that's just how it's going to be.
I mean, just because we haven't found the graviton yet, if it does exist, I mean...
Well, I mean, in general relativity, gravity isn't a force. It literally isn't.
That's true, yeah.
It's a shift in the coordinate system.
Mm.
But, you know what? When I put a weight on a scale, the scale registers a force. So I'm just going to keep going with it because it also registers a force when I push on it. So at the scale at which I generally operate, gravity is a force.
Feels like a loophole to me, Dapper.
Yeah, that's, I mean, fair enough. Like, look, if you want to get into a discussion about general relativity, I might be willing to do it on a different show. And then I will fully be on board with, yeah, gravity is not actually a force. It's actually a shift in the coordinate system. It's the coordinate system warping around massive objects. All that's true. The geodesics that objects are following means that they're not technically accelerating while they're in free fall. All of that, all 100% true. However, in my day-to-day life, the force of gravity is very real.
Well, then I've got a question. You think the Earth is billions of years old? Why do we still have comets today? We shouldn't have any.
Oh, just take a drink. We already
there should be no comments at all.
Unless there's sources of new comments. So yeah, just take a drink.
They would have just said it like such a gotcha too, though. It drives me crazy.
I know it's terrible.
But comets fit perfectly with what God's word says. 6,000 years ago, God created the heavens and the earth. David the psalmist said, the heavens will declare the glory of God. And they do exactly that. They declare God's glory.
What about, like, fast forward 5,000 years from now, and then what if we still have comets? What would people like Hoban say?
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, there wasn't 6,000, or let's say like 3,000 years ago, right? People were watching the sky a lot because it was very important for things like when to plant crops and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But we don't get a significantly higher incidence of comets. So, and we know that some comets have got to be older than others because we've seen them several times before, and there are other comets that we haven't. So, like, it's not like a slam dunk, but, like, if this were true, we should predict a higher incidence of comet sighting in the past, in history. But we don't actually get that. So, yeah, I don't know.
I think that's reasonable. A reasonable claim to make.
Yeah.
You know, the evolution theory has the sun and the stars evolving before the earth.
Oh, God.
Not really. No, it has the sun and the earth forming mostly the same time. But, okay. Well, you know what? We'll just take a drink. And then we'll just say...
It also has
that's where we're
other stars forming before our sun.
Yeah. But that is where we're going to end up leaving it for tonight, I think. Because we're going to do some wrap-up stuff. We are almost at that 2-hour mark. So, what I'm going to say is, let's see. Erika, what do you have to plug for your channel or for appearances on other channels or anything like that?
Guys, come hang out on my channel tomorrow evening because we're doing a professional creationist tier list. It's going to be very, very fun.
Yes.
There's going to be lots of drinking and lots of roasting. And it's going to be myself, Dapper. Dr. Dan is going to be there. That is to say, Creation Myths. I believe that Walker will probably be there too. We're going to try to entice Jackson to come and our friend Mr. Wilford. So
yes.
What time is that?
Phoebe is willing.
Oh, what time is that?
That is a good question. I do not remember. What time is that?
Oh, I don't know. I actually didn't set a time yet. What works for you, Dapper?
I mean, you name a time, and I can probably make it happen.
All right, let's say 7 o'clock Central.
So that's 6 o'clock for me.
Yeah, 8 Eastern, 6 for you. Does that work?
Yeah, that should be fine. You'll probably have to remind me tomorrow.
Well, I'm going to remind everybody.
Okay,
don't miss it.
Oh, I don't want to miss it. That's going to be a lot of fun. In fact, it might be enough fun that I ask your permission to mirror it. So.
Yeah, deal.
All right, fair enough. So let's see. Josh, what do you have to plug? You got anything?
I'm not. No, I have nothing to plug.
All right. Not even a drain?
Say again?
I said not even a drain? You could plug the drain.
Oh, ha. Drains are meant to drain, not to be plugged.
Drink for a joke that didn't land.
I'm gonna drain this bottle here.
Ooh, there you go. Which actually, by the way, so I got some spicy honey, which might have come from a panel member here. And
what are you talking about?
I know. I really like it, but the bottle is like the bottle has like a cork on it, and it's actually really inconvenient because there's no way to get like the honey off the rim of the bottle without either like without touching it, at least with something, right? Like I can't just wash it off because then water will just spill into the bottle. So like I really like the spicy honey, but like the packaging is just super inconvenient. I'm just like, you guys could do a much better job. But
well, you could transfer it to another container, but that doesn't solve your initial complaint.
Yeah, like there should be a better storage mechanism.
Well, one thing that I noticed
we can't get super into this.
Okay, never mind.
We gotta close it soon. All right, so Thursday, so day after tomorrow, we are going to be watching my first episode of a new two-parter about Raw Matt, in which Raw Matt gets the Rhapsids entirely wrong. And Erika, I think you've seen that one, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Is it? Let people know in a few words what you think about that one.
It's scathing, and I loved it.
I'm a little bit spicier than I normally am in that one. Let's just say that.
Right, but I like that. The thing is Raw Matt fell victim to what Eric fell victim to during the entirety of this stream, which is to say, didn't do the bare minimum of research.
Well, actually, I found out that he definitely read some of the Wikipedia articles regarding the things he talks about, because the only papers that he even alludes to are the ones that are mentioned in the body of the Wikipedia articles for the taxa in question.
Okay, well, that's a step above. Good for him.
But it also means he didn't even go as far as to check the actual references from Wikipedia.
Yeah. Half credit.
Yeah.
Is this two-parter going to include the publicly available to view paper that Raw Matt submitted?
No, this is actually an article that he put on his website.
Okay.
Okay. So, other than that, I don't know if something is happening Thursday for certain. I might actually be having a discussion about falsificationism and the philosophy of science with Otangelo on Saturday.
Ooh.
Yep. Because I basically told him today, like, dude, you got to stop trying to engage me in debate in my comments, because it's just not going to happen. And at a certain point, I'm going to start counting it as harassment. And this is me letting you know. You have to stop. And so he said, oh, you email me. I'm like, all right, here's an email. So yeah, that might happen this Saturday. Tuesday after next, I'm not sure. It might be the thing on falsification, or it might that I'm working on, or it might be the second Raw Matt thing. And then of course Tuesday will be another Kent with Bent. I'm going to be moving soon, so there might be a disruption in uploads. I'm also thinking about trying to get a couple of like pre-recorded Kent with Bents in, just so that we have something on that Tuesday to just put up there, so that you get something. It won't be the same videos that we've been watching. It'll be something new if we do that. And I might just have that as sort of like a just in case we have something happens. So yeah, I'm going to be moving by the end of the month. I will be in a new location, so my audio might change, stuff like that. Which also means all your super chats are going towards the Help Me Move funds. So, and we're gonna pretty much wrap it up there. And I want to say a special thank you to everyone who's watching, especially those of you who super chatted, which includes Eric the Tyrannoceratops, Ian Chen, Command Cyborg. So thank you very much for your generosity. It is really appreciated. As you guys know, there are links in the description to the Patreon. You can join the channel. There's also a link to a merch store where you can get some Dapper Dino merch, if that is something you would like to do to support the channel, because every little bit helps. But with that, I'm going to leave you with the end credits, and then we're going to end the stream. So thank you guys. I love all of you.
See you next time.
I want to take a moment during this first month of a brand new year to thank my patrons and my channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above: Benthoven, Ian Chen, Sphincter of Doom, and Henry Hutanen. You guys really helped me get through the last year, and it was a rough one, and I cannot thank you enough. Now, if anyone here is listening and isn't supporting but would like to, there's a link to my Patreon down in the description, as well as the option to join the channel underneath this video. If those aren't right for you, there's also a Teespring store, and if none of that works for you, please just like and share this video, because that helps this channel grow,